Good morning. How are you doing today? And welcome, replay viewers. Thank you for being here today. If you are showing up in the replay, say hi, wave, let me know what's going on with you, hit like, just to let me know that you're here, and then I can say hi back to you. So I am super excited about this week's topic because it was based on a question that I got from one of you. And if you are part of my insiders, then you get an email from me once a month giving you a rundown of what is new on the podcast. And you also get periodic updates from me asking you questions, making sure I'm serving you in the way that you want to be served. So if you're not a part of my insiders group already, let me know, but you can become an insider by going to dinacataldo.com and signing up for reminders on the podcast or any of the freebies that I have on there. So that will get you access to more of what I have to offer, and it also gives you an opportunity to give me your input, because the people who are my insiders, I know they're my peeps. I know they're my tribe, and you're the people that I want to be there for and to create a community around. I want to help people who are trying to design a life that they love and that they deserve. So if you don't already know me, my name's Dina Cataldo. I am a lawyer and a coach, specifically a life design coach. And the reason I became a life design coach is because I found that I was lacking structure in a way that allowed me to focus on what I wanted. And despite being a high achiever and reaching all of these goals, I recognized that I was not doing certain things I needed to do that would serve me and help me live my life bigger and better and to serve more people. So my energy has been devoted to creating a business surrounding this life design. Now, part of that is the podcast. And so this week, I'm going to talk a little bit about the podcast and the question that I'm answering, which is all about procrastination. And I also want to let you know that there's different avenues to get involved in designing the life that you love. And you can go to my website, dinacataldo.com. And if you go to the Work With Me tab, there's multiple different features in there that'll let you do things like design your morning to create more space in your life so that you can start making that quiet time to begin designing the life you love. And of course, you can work with me one-on-one. So you can DM me or you can message me and I can get you more information on that. So today, let's talk a little bit about procrastination. So if you go to dinacataldo.com/episode 11, and I've linked to that in the post, you can go directly to the website. You can also listen, of course, on iTunes, Stitcher, whatever you listen to podcasts on. But I've also created a blog this month. So if you're more of a reader, less of a listener, you have plenty of opportunity to get the information that you need that's relevant to you. But what I'm going to do today is walk through the freebie that I created for you that will walk you step by step through how to bust through procrastination, to bring more awareness around why you're procrastinating and how you can get through that. And so if you're showing up now, just hit like, say hi, let me know that you're here, and then that way I can engage with you, because that's the whole reason I want to do this. So, all right, what do we have here? We have the procrastination busting roadmap. And so if you go to dinacataldo.com/episode 11, not only do you get to get this information, but I've also created a structured guide. So if you need a little bit more to walk you through, it's there for you. And really, I get into the psychology of what procrastination is and why we do it. I mean, we all do it. It's completely normal. And I think that there's a lot of shame that's built around procrastination. And I want to break through those barriers because it's nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, I look at it as a gift. It's a gift to allow us to become aware of what our goals are. And not only that, but why we're avoiding reaching those goals. So for me, this episode was particularly relevant because a lot of us have big goals, but we don't always know what's holding us back. And when we start really thinking through why we're acting the way that we're acting, we can begin to see the fears that are starting to build up. And we may not understand them as fears, but when we start looking at them, we'll understand that what we've been doing is really holding ourselves back and self-sabotaging. And the reason I feel that procrastination is such a gift is that it's one of the easier self-sabotage behaviors to recognize. And if you've ever felt this way, let me know and let me know in the comments. But when you're procrastinating, at least when I'm procrastinating, I can actually feel it in my body. I can feel tenseness in my shoulders, and I recognize that I should be doing something else, that I'm not doing what I need to do, being the person that I need to be to create the reality that I want. So part of the procrastination busting roadmap that I created is to walk you step by step through each of these questions that I talk about in the podcast. So the first thing that I break down and I have you answer is, what are your procrastination behaviors? You know when you're just kind of fiddling around wasting time. I know I do. I'm messing around on my phone. I'm watching, binge watching television. I'm suddenly recognizing that it's really important to clean when I have a to-do list a mile long. What I'm doing in this moment is not forwarding what my real goals are, what my really big goals are. And so that's the first step, is just recognizing that you're procrastinating, that you're doing these behaviors that are big time sucks, that are behaviors that, if we woke up tomorrow and we died, we'd say, wow, I wish I would have fill in the blank. Instead, I was watching reruns of Doctor Who, which I love, but, there's way more better ways to spend my time, right? And one of the behaviors I've noticed with myself is that I multitask to procrastinate on focusing on my goals. And what I mean by that is this: I will be watching television and at the same time be working on a task that would take me much less time if I put my full focus on it. But instead, I allow myself to multitask by watching something on television and at the same time working on my computer. And I feel like I am accomplishing something, and I am also spending time with my family, my dog, that kind of thing, instead of focusing in on what's really important to me in that moment. So recognizing these behaviors, recognizing the stalling behaviors that we have, the behaviors that allow us to pull our focus away from our real goals, is the very first step. The next step is recognizing what our true goal is. So for instance, I may be procrastinating by multitasking and creating pictures on social media, doing something that, yes, forwards my business, but at the same time, I'm not doing the big work. So the big work that I need to do, the work that forwards my goals, the goal I want to reach, is to maximize my reach, to connect with more people and help advance their goals. But am I really doing that by multitasking and not doing the big goals, instead working on those small tasks? No, I'm not. So what am I afraid of? Am I afraid of really succeeding? Am I afraid of failing? So those are different thought processes that each of us goes through when we're starting to work through what our big goals are. So that's the next question, is what are your big goals and why are you avoiding them? That's actually the very next one, which is, what's our story? Because when we're not going for our goals full tilt, when we're procrastinating, when we're pulling back, there's a story that we've built around our big goals. And I break down each of those stories in the podcast and in the booklet. So I'm not going to go through each of those step by step, but that's part of the process. Like, you want to think through, what are the stories I have surrounding this? Is it that I'm not good enough? Is it that I'm going to fail? Is I'm going to be judged? So on and so on and so on. And there's a ton more other stories available to us. And that is part of the process, working through what our story is so that we can see it quicker. And the quicker we see procrastination, like what we're doing is procrastination, the quicker we can snap out of it the next time. And that's what all of these high performers that you see who are accomplishing big things in the world have in common, is that they are able to snap out of procrastination sooner and sooner. So they recognize it in themselves. They have an awareness built around it, and then they're able to do this. Hey, Colleen, how are you doing today? So it's nice to see you. So that's something that you want to keep in mind when you start to see these procrastination behaviors, is it's a good thing. You're starting to recognize it. You're starting to see what might be holding you back. And therefore, you can begin to snap out of it sooner and sooner and sooner. Procrastination is completely normal. It is something we all do. It's a survival instinct. And that's something I get into the podcast, is that this is just something that we're wired to do. And I talk a little bit about the psychology in episode 11 too. So once we've figured out our story, we need to figure out a way to reframe that story so that we can make what we tell ourselves more empowering. And what I mean by that is this. So let's say you're starting a business, and it's really easy to start that whole self-comparison mode online and seeing that there's somebody already doing what you want to do, or somebody who's doing it even better, and thinking through all of these, categories in our brain, like, why are we going to do this? Like, all these stories that we have, why would we do this? Someone's already doing it. Someone seems to be doing it better than me already, right? Can you resonate with that, Colleen? Hey, Colleen. I know I can. I mean, we've all gone through stages in our lives when we're comparing ourselves with someone else and how far ahead they seem. But it's not fair to us to begin to compare our beginning to someone else's middle. Like, if we're comparing our beginnings to someone else's middle, we're selling ourselves short, really. I mean, it's not fair to us. And getting into that comparison mode can also put us into procrastination because it builds up that fear. So one of the reframes that you can make in that particular situation where you're seeing other businesses that are already doing what you want to do, other people who are already doing what you want to do and seem so far ahead, you can reframe that to be something like, well, you know what? Their business doesn't have my personality. And the fact that someone else is doing this shows me that there's a market for what's going on. Right, Colleen? Right? So if there's something that we have a fear around and something that we've created a story around, it's very simple for us to switch that around. And so in the guide, you're going to want to go through and work these step by step and figure out what your reframe is going to be. So another example is, so this is one where I know I've struggled with, so I imagine a lot of other people have. I've heard this from other people as well when I'm coaching. I don't know how to accomplish this goal, is the story. The story is, this is hard. There's so much I need to do. I don't have time. Well, the reframe for that can be this. So what would someone who knew how to accomplish this goal, what would that person do? Who has already accomplished this goal? What can I learn from them? And you can ask yourself, well, if it were easy, if I did have the time, what would I do? How would I do it? And instead of going into that, and really it's a victim mode, right? When we create a story surrounding something that we're not doing, something that we're hesitating to do, that we're not going into full tilt, we're actually going into victim mode. So to make that more empowering, we can reframe it and we can ask ourselves more empowering questions. Well, what is it that we can do to help ourselves? Who can I learn from to get me from point A to point B? And if I'm looking at somebody and I'm comparing myself to them, can I pull back and say, you know what? They have been doing this longer than I have. They have, different things going for them. I have a lot going for me. My personality, my friends, my flair, my experiences, my own personal stories that I can tell other people. So keep that in mind when you're creating that reframe. Create something that's empowering to you. So then when you go into that procrastination mode, you can recognize it. And then you can see, okay, why am I procrastinating? And then you already have a reframe available to you. So you can start asking yourself the questions you need to ask that are more empowering, saying those things to yourself that are more empowering. And then the next thing that you can do is start to break down the things that you need to do in order to reach your goals into small bite-sized pieces. And what I mean by that is, for instance, I've talked about this before in my 90-day goal planner, which is like, it's my best friend right now, is when you create these big goals. Let's say I have a 5-year goal. I break that down into 1 year, then I break that into 90-day increments during that year. I break the goal down, chunk it down, chunk it down, chunk it down. And I really don't like the word chunk, but that's the only word I can think of right now at 8:21 in the morning. But that's the benefit of having structure like that in a planner that you love, or even if you create it yourself, is to have that bite-sized piece of the bigger picture. So looking at that giant picture, that giant goal, can be really intimidating. It can seem impossible. But when you step back and you say, okay, I don't need to have, let's say we're talking about weight loss. I don't need to lose all 50 pounds right now. I can break this down into something smaller. I can look at, what am I doing this week? What is my meal plan? What are the recipes I'm going to use? How am I going to organize my refrigerator for success so that I'm reaching for something healthy rather than reaching for something unhealthy? And we just break that down into this week. We're not thinking about the bigger goal. We're thinking about the bite-sized bit that we can focus on right now, and staying in that moment and reducing that overwhelming feeling, that anxious feeling that we might have. And we can do that with all kinds of goals. So part of that guide that I created, that roadmap I created that you can download at dinacataldo.com/episode 11, is that you can break this down for yourself. Okay, Colleen, so you said I have a lot of procrastination for working on my food blog and decluttering my living space. Yeah. Okay, so let's think about that. If you have a lot of procrastination for working on your food blog and decluttering your living space, we're going to break those up into two things. So first, let's look at your food blog. What does that food blog represent to you? What is your big goal with your food blog? Can you let me know that? And then once you let me know what your bigger goal is, then we can kind of look at how you are framing it. So let's just take that one step at a time. So while you're typing that, I'm just going to let you know that in addition to breaking everything down into smaller pieces, you can also do things that are empowering for you, like becoming a member of a group. Like there's all kinds of challenges online to help you get started and to keep you accountable. And it's so much easier to be held accountable by people you don't know. And when I've had friends who've tried to keep me accountable, or I've leaned on them to keep me accountable, it never works, because they're going to give you an out. They are not in the same headspace as we are when it comes to creating our goals. And so, for instance, for working on your food blog, Colleen, there's also a lot of things that you could go online. And one of the things I recommend is just going to Google and looking for challenges. Like there's always a challenge going on for, write. Like for instance, I referenced Jeffrey Goins' 500 words a day, but you can go to his challenge and you can be in a group that creates that accountability so that you have somebody to lean on. And if you have questions or blocks, you have somebody to go to. So, all right, Colleen, so I haven't heard back from you. Maybe you're typing, but if you're working on your food blog, the first thing to do is to break that down into chunks. If you haven't worked through your goals in terms of like the bigger picture, you can also just move forward and say, you know what, I'm just going to work on this in a bite-sized chunk. What's the one little thing I can do right now? The one little thing might be waking up every morning and just sitting down and writing what you had at a restaurant, like a local restaurant, or writing down, some different thoughts that you had about restaurants you want to go to if you're not even there yet. And you're just like, okay, and what kind of food do you want to write about? Like if you were to write about something, then what kind of things would you write about? Does that make sense? Okay. So your goal is to finish it and go live with it go live with it in the next month. but it seems overwhelming and I compare my blog to others like you talked about earlier. Yeah, I mean, that's totally normal. So if your goal is to finish it, what does a finished blog look like to you? What does that mean? That you have your website up? Does it mean that you have multiple written blogs already done? Can you explain a little bit more what that means to you? What does finished mean? And that's something that we can all think about, is what does the end result look like to us? Like, get really specific about it, because when we have that down, we're going to help ourselves. So for instance, if you're starting a food blog and you want to have that goal of having it finished, that finished product, does it look like having it completely written up? Does it look like having the website to begin with? Does it look like sending out emails to friends to promote it? Does it look like creating an email list so that you can send it to people? What kinds of things are you looking for, Colleen? Like, what is your finished goal? What does the finished product look like to you? And when we're thinking about our finished product, it really helps to write it down. So for me, no matter what my goal is, and this has helped me a lot, is I write down that goal. I write down my big dreams. And those big dreams might scare me. In fact, I had a really big goal that I came up with 2 weeks ago, and it put such fear in me that I procrastinated. Like, I felt that weekend this anxiety, like, oh my God, I just dreamed so big. I don't know if I can handle it. Like, my body is literally fighting against the goal, which is normal. And I totally took one day and just vegged out on TV and multitasked, like I was talking about earlier, which is not really focusing. And it was because I felt this fear. And what was that fear? That fear was failure. Like, I hate failing. I'm not used to failing. It does not feel good. And so I instead of walking through this process, which I had to walk through and figure it out, like, as I was going and as I got this question about it, as I put this together, because these are some of the things I needed to work through. So, all right, so Colleen, you might have walked away or something, but when you figure out what it looks like to have a completed blog. What does that look like to you? And when you've done that, then you're going to break it down into those chunks, because if you want to have a blog that reaches 1,000 people, let's say, and you want to be able to highlight restaurants in your city or across the country or across the world, it's going to look a little bit different, right? So you want to be able to create a schedule because you want to stay on task. These schedules are going to include things like making sure you have a domain name, ensuring that you are hosted with somebody, making sure that you have an email account, like a MailChimp. MailChimp's free. So if you go to MailChimp.com, you can use them for free. You want to create a schedule so that you're sending out emails on a regular schedule saying, hey, this week I have 5 tips for you to eat fabulously at an inexpensive restaurant in Chicago, you know, whatever it is, and creating those things that are of interest to other people. Because even if we find it really interesting, right, it doesn't mean other people are going to find it interesting. So then you want to think about who is your target market. I mean, this could be broken down chunk by chunk by chunk. So it's really important that you get super clear on what's going on in your business. Now, one resource that I would highly recommend is amyporterfield.com. And although she's not necessarily working specifically on blog content, she can help you get organized in terms of creating schedules, in terms of focusing on the right things in your business. So Amy Porterfield has a podcast, which I love. It's called Online Marketing Made Easy, and it's fabulous. I love it. I can't say enough about it. So I highly recommend you go there and give that a shot. Okay, so I hope that helped. You know, if you have ever procrastinated, I hope that helped. I've created a free guide. It's called the Procrastination Busting Roadmap, which walks you through the steps that we just talked about. You can get it at dinacataldo.com/episode 11. There you can also hear the podcast, you can read the blog, and it's all about, you know, what you can do to work through procrastination, and you can figure out what's going on so you can bring awareness to your life and get through that procrastination and get to the other side where our goal is, where our dream is. And that is one key to designing your life, is taking control of your mind and working through the procrastination rather than letting it control you. So another thing that I hope you do is you spread the word about the podcast. I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or anywhere else you listen, but iTunes is especially helpful. So if you go there, you can also go on your phone to the podcast app, and you can leave a review there as well. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I will be checking. Colleen, if you have an opportunity to see the rest of this and you come back to it, feel free to ask your questions, and I will come back to this group, because this was really great. Like, I love being able to interact with you, to be able to answer your questions while we're here live, because not only does it help, you know, the one person who asks a question, but for people who listen to this later, I think it's really beneficial. So thank you so much, and I will talk to you next week. All right, bye for now.